dias from Last Point. This is the Rorschach Argentina update from the 30th of July, 2026. A quick summary of what's going down in Argentina. Diplomatic tensions between Argentina and Brazil erupted over the weekend during President Milei's visit to Sao Paulo. Attending a Liberal Party convention to support Flavio Bolsonaro, the son of former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, Milei launched direct personal attacks against Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, the current president, calling him a thief and a total totalitarian. Milei also insulted Supreme Court Justice Alessandra de Moraes as a bald piece of trash after the judge denied him permission to visit Jair Bolsonaro under house arrest. The Brazilian Foreign Ministry responded swiftly on Sunday the 26th by recalling its ambassador to Buenos Aires for consultations and summoning Argentina's envoy in Brasilia to express complete revulsion. The Brazilian vice president called the interference unacceptable, while Lula brushed off the insults with laughter. The dispute escalated further when Milei publicly accused Brazil, Mexico, and the United States Democratic Party of funding a campaign against Argentina during the World Cup, claims that Claudio Sheinbaum, the Mexican president, firmly denied. Writing in the Buenos Aires Herald in English, Adrian Genesir examines the fallout of this encounter in his essay titled, "Milei Mistakes Provocation for Diplomacy." The piece explores how the president's aggressive campaign style creates immediate domestic political applause while imposing serious long-term economic and diplomatic costs on the country. To read the full piece, check out the link in the show notes. Turning to international financial relations, Kristalina Georgieva, the managing director of the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, made her first visit to Argentina in 7 years. Arriving in Buenos Aires on Monday the 27th, Georgieva held press conferences alongside Luis Caputo, the economy minister, and met with President Milei before traveling to the Vaca Muerta oil field in the Neuquén province in Patagonia. During her visit, Georgieva offered an optimistic outlook, stating that she does not foresee Argentina needing additional IMF funding given the central bank's steady accumulation of foreign reserves. She commended the country's economic trajectory and energy export potential while emphasizing that policymakers must address informal labor, support small businesses, and protect the rule of law to ensure broad-based growth. Since we mentioned the central bank reserves, it actually paused its daily greenback accumulation right after the fund's announcement. On Tuesday the 28th, the central bank snapped a nearly 7-month-long streak of daily dollar purchases, standing aside while state-owned Banco Nación sold dollars to stabilize the peso near 1,500 per dollar amid demand from local savers and upcoming debt payouts. Adding pressure to the local currency, public sentiment toward the executive branch continues to cool. The Torquato de Tella University published its latest index of government confidence, showing a 6.5% drop in July to 1.94 points on a 0 to 5 scale, marking the lowest rating of Javier Milei's presidency. External factors are also creating headwinds for the administration's economic roadmap. On Friday the 24th, the United States import tariffs ordered by the Trump administration took effect. The measure places a 10% tariff on goods from dozens of nations, including Argentina, over labor standards compliance. Adrian Genesir, the presidential spokesperson, acknowledged that the sudden trade duties have introduced tension and pushed the country risk index back above 430 basis points. However, Genesir emphasized that key Argentine exports like steel, aluminum, and certain raw materials will receive specific exemptions. On that note about managing foreign currency and macroeconomic stability, the government is preparing another legislative push to encourage citizens to bring hidden savings into the formal economy. Caputo announced that the executive branch will submit the Fiscal Innocence II bill to Congress to address concerns raised by tax experts over an earlier law passed in December. The proposed legislation seeks to protect taxpayers who bring stashed dollars into the banking system from future penalties. Caputo stressed that keeping cash outside the financial system is bad business due to inflation, pointing out that over $170 billion remains stashed outside local banks. Moving from financial regulations to national resource output, energy production continues to serve as the main engine driving foreign currency into the nation. A private sector report by economist Nadine Arganyana reveals that Argentina achieved its best energy trade balance in a decade during the first half of the year. Driven by surging crude oil and natural gas output from Vaca Muerta, the energy surplus reached nearly $6 billion between January and June, a 58% increase compared to the same period last year. Higher global energy prices and expanding pipeline infrastructure helped generate over $2 billion in net trade improvements. Even as macro indicators like energy trade hit historic records, conditions in the labor market present a starkly different reality. A report from the Fundación Mediterránea Institute shows that job quality has severely degraded. Over 9 million workers, representing 44% of the labor force, now work in informal employment without Social Security or pension benefits. The study highlights growing job pressure, with over 5 million people actively seeking additional hours or second jobs to cover living expenses. The research group also noted that while young women have entered the job market in larger numbers over the past decade, almost all have been pushed into precarious or unregistered work. On a related note regarding household earnings, the real value of the national minimum wage has collapsed. A study by the CIFRA Research Center shows that the minimum wage has lost over 40% of its purchasing power since the current administration took office, standing at 367,800 pesos, around $243 at official rates. The baseline salary sits at its lowest real purchasing level in nearly 30 years. Union analysts attribute the slide to the government repeatedly setting minimum wage increases below monthly inflation rates following deadlocked meetings with business leaders. Beyond baseline wages and household budgets, another debate is brewing over the country's literary scene. Authors, independent booksellers, and major retail chains have united to oppose a government initiative to repeal the fixed book price law. The 2001 law requires publishers to set uniform retail prices for books across all selling platforms. Federico Sturzenegger, the deregulation minister, argues that removing price controls will lower costs through free competition. However, the Argentine Book Chamber warns that scrapping the rule will allow supermarkets and online giants to sell bestsellers at a loss, bankrupting hundreds of independent neighborhood bookstores and ultimately concentrating the market. In other news involving tech and public infrastructure, President Milei announced an agreement between the National Communications Agency and Elon Musk's Starlink. Speaking at the Rural Exhibition in Buenos Aires City, Milei confirmed that Starlink will donate 6,000 satellite kits and 2 years of high-capacity internet service to connect rural schools across the country. Following the initial 2-year donation, the communications regulator will fund annual service fees using the Telecommunications Universal Service Fund. The deal expands Starlink's growing footprints in the domestic market, which now accounts for a quarter of the company's regional operations. Shifting from technology to extreme winter weather, severe mountain storms have created major disruptions along the Andes. Over 3 meters of heavy snow forced authorities to close the key Highway 60 border crossing at Punta del Inca in the Mendoza province in western Argentina, stranding nearly 1,000 cargo trucks. Rescue teams evacuated more than 100 people from high-altitude outposts as 2 meters of snow accumulated on roofs. Additional Andean mountain passes in Neuquén and Chubut in Patagonia, as well as Catamarca in the northwest, were shuttered, while heavy snowfall forced flight diversions away from the Bariloche airport. From cold mountain winds in the Andes, another storm is brewing on the football pitch. FIFA announced disciplinary investigations into the Argentine Football Association and several national team players following incidents at the 2026 World Cup. The inquiry focuses on the display of a fan-made Las Malvinas son Argentinas, or the Malvinas are Argentine, flag on the pitch after the semi-final win against England, which violated stadium regulations regarding non-sporting political messages. 2 individual players also face review over post-match altercations following the final against Spain. Meanwhile, defender Nicolás Otamendi officially announced his retirement from the national team at age 38, ending an 18-year international career. And that's it for this week. Thank you for joining us. Anything to ask or tell us, email us at info@rorschach.com. If you want to be a peach, check out our t-shirts at rorschach.store. Nos vemos la próxima semana.